So welcome all to the fourth lecture in the HUM-Pudiodor digital literacy program. As you all know, it's a 10 to 12 week program, and 10 to 12 week program, and we are in the fourth week of lectures and exercises that are conducted by Nitya and Madhura on Thursdays, and sometimes it moves around. So in today's lecture, we generally talk about files, folders, and drives. Files, folders, and drives, basically you can think of it as information storage and information organization. How do we actually store data and information, and how do we organize it, right? Anytime you have a lot of data, a lot of information, you need to organize it. Otherwise, it's very hard to search. It's very hard to find things. So this is the fourth lecture. We've already completed 3 lectures. And this lecture will feed into the next lecture next week, which is the software apps and applications. So we'll talk just briefly about some of the apps and applications in this lecture today. And so having said that, let's jump right into it. Dhanashree, you're able to hear me, right?
Yes.
Okay, very good. So at the end of this lecture, you need to be you need to be able to understand a few key terms, few key words, words that in computer terminology or computer vocabulary, right? We call them terms or keywords, whatever, however you want to kind of say it. So there's the idea of data and information. So you need to be able to understand what is data, what is information, what is the difference between the two. Then once we know that, we need to know how do we save or store data and information. That's what this is about: files, folders, and drives. Then where do we save or store files? Then what are folders? Where do we store folders? What are physical and logical drives? And how do we get our physical and logical drives? And what are file systems? Then briefly, I'll talk about network drives, or in this case, internet accessible file systems. Before we get to the quiz, we will talk about the different kinds of files that are out there. And of course, folks, please go on mute. There's a lot of feedback here. Can everybody go on mute? So what is data and what is information? So what is very critical here is in the computer software, computer space, people use data and information interchangeably. What does interchangeably means? When they say information, sometimes they mean data. When they say data, sometimes they mean information. For most people, don't really care whether it is data or information. They use both the words, both the terms. But the more you understand computer software, the more you get into computer software related jobs, I would advise you to understand the difference. What is the difference? Let's say we have this boy on the left. His name is Ram, and his age is 17 years. And that is data. The idea that his name is Ram and that his age is 17 years, that is data. It is standalone data. Nobody is interpreting that data. Nobody is trying to understand it. It is just Ram and 17 years. Now on the right side, you have some other boy talking to this girl, right? And he is telling her on the phone. This other boy's name, his name is Ram, and he is 17 years old. So the moment you convey that kind of data to somebody else and it has meaning, that girl now knows this other boy's name is Ram and he's 17 years old. The moment you have meaning for data, it becomes information. Okay, so that is the difference. Data is standalone data, it stands by itself. The moment you try to interpret it, the moment you try to understand it, the moment you try to actually make sense of it, it becomes information. For example, you have your cyclone Nivar, I guess is the name, that passed through Chennai. If somebody says the rainfall for the day was like 4 inches of rainfall, then 4 inches of rainfall is just data. But if somebody says the 4 inches of rainfall, in which week it was, on which day it was, and how it affected people, that is information. Okay, so data and information, there's a critical difference between the two, but for the most part, a lot of people use data and information interchangeably, which means they use one for the other. Now, who generates this data? Who generates this kind of information, right? So people, on the left side, you have two gentlemen talking, two gentlemen, maybe they're messaging, maybe they're sending emails, right? Maybe they're writing documents, but the moment one exchanges information or data with the other person, it could be over the phone, we are generating information data. The moment your phone is recorded by your phone company, or your message is recorded by WhatsApp and Facebook, then basically it becomes data and information. So people are generating information all the time. Now, on the right side, you will also see that information is generated by computers all the time. So what are some examples of information that are generated by people all the time? The moment you take pictures, photographs with your camera, your photograph is information. So every day, if you're taking pictures, your selfies, right? And or maybe you're taking selfie video, some kind of video, you are generating information. It is videographic information, it is photographic information, and you are generating that information. Now, how do computers generate information or data? Let's say you have, I will use some terms here which may be difficult for people to understand. You can always go to Google Translate and try to get the Tamil translation for it. But for example, if you receive rainfall, how is rainfall measured? Rainfall is measured in terms of centimeters and inches, right? How do we know we received 4 inches of rainfall in a day? There are rain sensors. What is a sensor? A sensor is something that is electronic, typically electronic. It is either, I will not go too much into details. It just measures something, right? A sensor measures something. In this case, a rain sensor measures how much rain was received in a day, right? So if the rain sensor measures 4 inches of rain electronically, and it sends the data to be recorded onto a computer, in principle, we have computers that are connected to sensors that are connected that are basically generating rainfall data every day, right? So that is one example of how computers generate information. Rainfall data every day, temperature data every day, right? Weather data every day, climate data for the year, right? Then earthquake data. If there is an earthquake in Gujarat, earthquake in Pakistan, earthquake in China, all that data is measured by sensors, and it is always stored on computers. So that's how computers generate information. Now, all this data and information, you have to store somewhere. How do you store it? You're already familiar with how your photos and videos are stored on your mobile phones. They are stored basically, if you use your photo app or your camera app, you only see the photos, right? If you use your camera app or video app or a media player app, you only see, you also see videos that you have taken, right? So information can be stored in a variety of ways, depending on what kind of data or information it is. If it is documents, it is stored as a like a document. It can be a text document where you are actually, you have typed something into a document just as a text, right? For example, many of mobile phones have a notes app, right? A notes app just stores whatever you type in as simple text. There is no serious formatting there, right? Some notes apps give you a little bit of formatting. You can make the font bold, italics, whatever. But in principle, it is just an unformatted text. Then, of course, many of you are familiar with word processing software like Microsoft Word. Some of you use, I think, WPS or WPC on Android. There's OpenOffice, there's StarOffice, there's a lot of there's LibreOffice, Libre or LibreOffice. They're all open source softwares. They're also available on mobile phones. You can use them to create documents. You can use them to create spreadsheets. Spreadsheets are also documents. Then with your camera photo app, you already know about photos and videos. With your voice memo app on your mobile phone, you can create audio. Then on a computer, if you're recording a music concert, you're actually storing it in the form of an audio file. Okay. So data and information can be stored in a variety of ways, depending on what kind of data it is. Here, I'm showing you just the document types, photos, videos, and audios, but there are a whole bunch of other types that we will not get into in this particular lecture. So we talked about data and information so far. How is it stored? It is stored in the form of files. Okay. Files can be documents, photos, videos, audios, those kind of types. Now we need some container, right? Think of when I say container, what do I mean? At home, you store rice in a vessel, right? That vessel is a container. That container is used to hold rice, right? It can hold rice, and maybe you have a vessel that can hold sambar. So that is again a container. So we need a container to hold files. That container is called a folder. Many of you may already be familiar with folders in your mobile phone, or if you've used Windows operating system. If you're not very familiar, a folder is nothing but a container for files. Container means you can put stuff inside it. So a folder is something that can hold files, and we put files inside it. Now, look at the symbols, right? The folder symbol is a classic folder concept that came up in European society and American society in terms of how you use hard copy folders, right, in a filing cabinet. These are all new words for you. Since you're already into the electronic digital age, you may never see a filing cabinet. So that is not important. So what you should remember is a folder almost always have one universal symbol. It is either yellow color or on the Mac it is blue color, but this is the symbol used for a folder. So in this picture here, I've shown 3 folders, right? So just one of those folders is enough to show the symbol of a folder. So what is a folder again? A folder is a container, a vessel for holding files. And what do files hold? Files hold data and information. Information can be different types. It can be text. It can be numbers in spreadsheets. It can be photos, videos, audio files, and other kinds of data. Now, the folders are it's a logical construct, logical container, a vessel, right? Now, if you have many vessels like that, if I have 10 vessels, 100 vessels, 100 folders, 1,000 folders, you all need some place to keep all those folders. You need a bigger vessel. That bigger vessel can be another folder, which holds a lot of folders. But at the top end of it, or in this case, it is the bottom, right? All of these things, all these folders have to finally go into one other larger vessel that is called a logical drive. In the first lecture, we talked about physical drives. Physical drives are hard disks. Hard disks or solid state drives, SSD, or micro SD card. Those are all physical drives. Physical means you can touch them and you can feel them, right? Now we are talking logical drives. Logical drives means you have to imagine. It is a vessel. Imagine a vessel, and in the vessel we put all our folders. I will show you how logical drives are mapped to physical drives later. But for now, just think of it as a logical construct or a concept. Imagine a vessel in your mind, and this folder goes into that vessel. All of these things will have names. Folders will have names. Logical drives will have names, which is why you may not be able to see them, but you will see the names. The moment you see the names, you will know it's a logical drive or if it's a folder or a file. Now, this whole thing, multiple logical drives together form a file system. It is a filing system or a file system. We call it a file system in computer science or computer application courses or computer software, right? Or in operating systems, we call it a file system. What is a file system? A file system is basically a way to organize your files, a way to organize your folders, a way to organize the logical drives that hold the folders, right? So there is in computer terminology, we use the word hierarchy. Hierarchy means there's an upper level, there's a lower level, and there are lowermost level, right? So at the topmost level is the file system. Below that level, you will have logical drives, and below the logical drives are folders, and below the folders are files. So that file system representation is what I'm showing you here. This is again a representation. The moment you see these kind of symbols, you should recognize that it is a file system, okay? So file systems are represented either using the diagram on the left or using the diagram on the right. Both are correct. It is just that I prefer the one on the left because it clearly shows that red cylinder as a logical drive. Because in operating systems like Windows, logical drives have names like C:. They used to have names like C:, D:, and E:, and so on, right? In other operating systems, you don't have those kind of names, but you will definitely know what kind of logical drive it is. They will have a name, but it'll be different. So remember again, a file system representation is a symbolic representation. Symbolic means using symbols. Symbols like the red cylinder here and the folder symbol, right? And the moment you show them connected this way, that means there is a hierarchy. That means there is an upper level, there is a lower level, which means one is inside the other. So what these connections show is that the folder on the left side is inside the red cylinder. I can always show other lines where I show files inside the folder. I can do that also. Okay. So moving on. You're familiar with this picture. Is everyone familiar with this picture from the very first lecture, where we talked about the logical structure of a computer, right? You must be familiar with the lady on the left. And then we talked about how she uses the display and the keyboard to connect with hardware. And the hardware is made usable by the operating system software. And all of the application software depend on the operating system to actually make use of the hardware and to provide very good applications like photo editing, photo recording, video recording, document editing, document creation, and so on. This is just, I want to use this notion, this idea of logical structure in the next slide. So remember the hardware that is in yellow, it is one layer or one particular layer in this stack. The green operating system software is another layer, okay? And then the blue is the application layer. Now, in the next slide, I'm going to turn it sideways, okay? So the yellow hardware is at the bottom. This is only for our understanding. It doesn't matter how you show it. You can show it left to right. You can show it bottom to top, top to bottom. It is just as long as you understand how they connect to each other, that's all that matters. So in this diagram, I've shown you hardware, the yellow part at the bottom. In the hardware, you know the central processing unit, the CPU, the hard disk I've shown the keyboard, the display. In the operating system, we learned in the first lecture that there are operating systems like Android, which you're very familiar with, then Windows, Mac OS, and so on. And we know the blue application software. You're already familiar with apps that run on Android. Now, the file system that you see on the right side, we have extended the operating system layer. The file system is is implemented by the operating system. The operating system not only allows particular services to be used by the application software, it also implements the logical structure. What is contained inside what? That kind of structure of the file system. So what is a file system? The operating system knows what is a file system. What is the name of the file system? The operating system will know it. How to use the file system? That is presented by the operating system to the application software. If the application software wants to create a file, it goes to the operating system and says, create a file for me. If the operating system wants to edit if an application software wants to edit a file, the application software goes to the operating system and says, open this file for me, I want to edit it, right? So that is why there is an arrow from the application software into the file system to show that all application software will access files in some form or the other. The file can be your photo, which is used by the photo camera app. The file can be a document, which is opened by a spreadsheet software or a word processing software. What you have to remember from this slide is that the file system is implemented by an operating system, by the operating system. And the files are used by apps to create, to edit, to modify, to delete, right? If you can create a file, you can always delete a file. You can update a file, you can modify. Initially, you can add stuff, you can modify it. If you do photo editing, you're modifying. If you're changing your word processing document, you're modifying it. So remember, file systems can have names, folders have names, logical drives have names, files have names, okay? Now, remember earlier I said I will talk about how a logical drive is mapped to a physical drive later. And this is where we talk about how the mapping happens. A logical drive is a vessel that holds folders, right? Now, that it was a logical construct or a logical object, right? Now we have to connect it with a physical object where we actually store the file bits, right? I did not talk about bits in the computer basics class, but think of bits as information. Now the information data that is there, we have to physically save it on a hard disk, right? So what is done by operating systems is the simplest way is to map a logical drive directly to a hard drive. So if I have a logical drive in Windows, let's call it C:, that C: drive can be mapped to a hard drive. Otherwise, if we have more modern laptops, It can be, instead of a hard drive which is slower, we can use a faster SSD drive, which is nothing but solid state drive. Which holds same kind of information, but it is faster. Then you're all familiar with a USB key, a USB drive, or a USB pen drive, right? So pen drives are shown on the right side here. So your logical drive can be mapped to a pen drive, which means the pen drive, if you give a name to that logical drive, that name is actually tied to, connected to the pen drive. So if you store a file in that logical drive, it is actually getting stored in the pen drive. If you create a folder in that logical drive, it is actually getting stored in the pen drive. If the logical drive is mapped to a micro SD card, which is shown here, micro SD drive or micro SD card is the same thing. If you're storing a folder in that logical drive and the drive is mapped to an micro SD card, then it is actually stored in the micro SD card. So the only thing you have to know here is how we connect the things that you can touch to the logical parts which are inside a file system, right? The logical drive is part of the file system, and the hard drive, the SSD, USB, they're all part of the hardware which you can touch and feel. Then there is another kind of drive. We call it a network drive. It is nothing but either a hard disk or a SSD drive stored remotely. Remote meaning not on your computer, but on another computer somewhere else. And that computer is reachable only over the network. The network can be your office network, or your school network, your home network, or it can be the internet. Okay, and that we call a network drive. This I'm just telling you just so you have some idea, but it is not that important for you to know at this stage, because this is a computer literacy class. But for those of you that are interested in computer applications, right, or computer related jobs, it is good to know the difference. So far we have talked about a logical storage organization type, how to store information, right? Information in logical objects like files, folders, file systems. That was all on the left side. How we store data and information using file systems, right? That's all on the left side. There is another way to store information. It is by using some other organization type called database. Okay, a database is typically not implemented by an operating system. It requires a separate application software called database application software. Okay, so the only reason I'm showing you the slide is, in the future, if somebody says database, they may mean what is on the right side. If somebody says file system, they will mean what is there on the left side. Okay. Now we talked about how physical drive is mapped to a logical drive. So at the bottom here, I have shown the physical drive and the logical drive together. I'm showing one-to-one mapping, meaning if I have one hard disk, one logical drive is what I'm mapping it to. You don't have to do it that way. You can always do one hard drive to multiple logical drives, but it complicates the view here. For simplicity, we will think of one hard disk, one SSD, one USB key, one micro SD card as mapping to a single logical drive, right? Now your mobile phone and your tablet on the left side, they will come embedded with an SSD and a solid state drive. Okay. Whenever they say your mobile phone is 8 gigabytes, what that means is your solid state storage is 8 gigabytes. If they say it is 16 gigabytes, that's what you have, your solid state. And some mobile phones allow you to have memory expansion, with a micro SD card. So these are the only options you kind of get with a mobile phone. You get a built-in SSD drive, which is the logical drive, and in mobile phone, you don't get to see how the logical thing is organized. Maybe you get to see a little bit if you go to the Files app. You can see some little bit of it. Depends how much Android shows, how much iOS shows. iOS shows generally a lot more. I'm not too familiar with the Android mobile phones. Dhanashree can talk to that. Now, iPhones typically do not allow expansion with micro SD card, whereas many Android phones do support it. So you either have one logical drive and an optional micro SD card expansion. Laptops more modern laptops have an SSD drive, and they will also support USB expansion. Like you can use a separate USB pen drive. You can also, some of them will have a micro SD card adapter. So you can add a micro SD card for additional storage. All of this means storage. If your logical drive, the one that came with the computer, has 32 gigabytes, you can expand your storage by adding additional types. Only desktops normally come with more types of drives. Many desktops will support multiple hard drives or multiple SSD hard drive combinations because they have more space, more room, and you're also paying more. Okay, so this particular slide you have to understand only to get some idea about if you're owning a mobile phone, what is it that you may actually see. You may see parts of the logical drive, the folders, files in it. You may see the expansion drive, or if you use a Google Drive, it will show up in your file system on your mobile phone. Then if you start using a laptop, you have to understand if you go into the file system, how the drive may show up, how the cards may show up, how the USB drives may show up. So we talked about the network drives in the previous one of the slides earlier. And in this slide, I just want to spend a little bit more time on a particular kind of network drive, what I refer to as storage cloud in the computer networking lecture 2 weeks ago. And it is nothing but a network drive. And the best examples of network drives that you can use over the internet are Google Drive and Microsoft's OneDrive. Then there are others that also offer this kind of drives over the internet. It is the drive is nothing but lot of storage over the network, storage over the internet. So Dropbox is another company that offers network drives, internet drives that are accessible over the internet. But the most popular one is Google Drive, because everybody who has Android mobile phones, they end up using Google Drive. So what is Google Drive? Google Drive is nothing but a whole bunch of Google computers sitting somewhere remotely. You don't know where, doesn't matter, right? They have a lot of hard disks, or they may have a lot of solid state drives. The amount of information that can be stored can be so much that you will not know how many zeros there are in the numbers for the capacity of people talk about terabytes, people talk of petabytes. You're familiar with megabytes, you're familiar with gigabytes, right? When you go into terabytes, petabytes, it's a lot more, billions more. So Dhanashree is going to walk you through a practical session on how to actually use Google Drive. Just remember that Google Drive is accessible from your mobile phone, from a laptop, from a desktop, and you can share files. Once you put your file on Google Drive, another person can access that same file the moment you give sharing access, right? How do you give sharing access to somebody? You give sharing access to somebody by using their internet name. What is their internet name? That person's internet name, it is their email address. So if you have a Gmail email address, that is what you use to share, to provide access to other people. For example, if Nitya stores a file on Google Drive, which she has access to, and she wants to basically give access to her file to Madhura, then basically she will, on Google Drive, she will change a setting for that file, shared file, and give access to Madhura using Madhura's Gmail email address. Okay. Now, this is the last slide before we get into the quiz. This file is about the different types of files. So if you go top to bottom on the left, it starts with documents, then we move to photos, then we move to videos, audios, all that you're very familiar with already. The bottommost is a particular kind of file. It is called an executable file or a binary file in some operating systems, and it is nothing but a software program, an application, or an app. Okay, an app typically has a lot of files that it uses, but there is one main file that is an executable file or a binary file. You don't need to, most often you will not actually directly end up writing a software unless you're a software engineer, but you already use apps, you already use applications, so you need to know the difference between a file that is actually a software program or an app, or a file that only stores data and information. That is the difference. All of the files that are called documents, photos, videos, audios here, they hold data or information. The one that says software programs, apps, they are applications that are runnable. You can run them on your computer. You can execute them. Okay. So your photo app is a software, whereas the photo it creates is data and information. Now, in the middle, going top to bottom, I'm talking about file name extensions. All files have names, right? The names typically have one first name, and then there's a dot. And after a dot, they frequently have an extension. The extension, which is the kind of becomes standard now, is a 3-letter extension, sometimes 4. The 3-letter extensions came from Windows. So they use extensions like .pdf, .txt for text. You are all familiar with PDF files that you use for either you're scanning your homework and sending to your teachers, right? Then txt is .txt. Any file that you save from your notes app will be stored as a .txt file, a text file. Then all of you are familiar with .doc. .doc is created by word processing software. .xls is created by Excel or other kinds of spreadsheets. Then PPT are all presentation documents. Then photos can have different kinds of file name extensions. They can be .jpeg, .jpg, .gif. Bitmaps will be .bit. There are other kinds of photo formats also. Then videos can have a few different kinds of formats, MPEG, MPG, .mov, .mpg, .mpeg. Audio files can have different extensions, .mp3, which is a very popular standard. Then executable software applications are .exe on Windows, .bin on Unix, Linux, .bat, batch file, .bat on Windows, .sh, .csh, on Linux and Unix computers. Now on the right side, top to bottom, I've listed all the applications that you would use to basically view all the files on the left, right? And sometimes you can not only view, you can also edit it. There are applications that support view only, and then there are applications that support both create, view, and edit. So you're familiar with many of the apps because you have used them on your mobile phone. Now all apps will work on data and information files. Only the operating system runs the files that are software programs. Okay. Any questions so far? Remember, if you don't ask questions, I'm going to ask questions. All right, we'll move into quiz time. Our practical session is will be kind of long today. May not be as long as the social media one, but it will be long. And I do have other meeting today. So quiz time. As usual, for quiz time, you can unmute yourself and answer the question, or you may choose to use text, the chat box, and enter your answer. So question, what is the difference between data and information? Anybody listening through the entire lecture?
Data is constantly generated by people. Information is somebody constantly generated by computer.
Not exactly. Data is generated by both people and computers and sensors, right? But information is how you interpret the data. What is the meaning of the data? That is information. But it is not. It does not matter if you use them interchangeably. Only when you become a serious data scientist or a computer scientist or a software programmer, then you have to know the difference, or a database engineer. Okay. If you're not a database engineer, if you're not a software engineer, you're not a computer scientist, you're not a data scientist, then it is okay if you use data and information interchangeably. But both are generated by people and computers. Second question, what are the different ways we store data and information? I've already shown the symbols there.
Document, photos, videos, audios.
And what is one name that we give for all of them together?
File, folder.
Files. Yes. Data and information are stored in files. Okay. That is the thing. Documents is a particular type of file, but all of them together, we call them file, right? So data and information are stored in the form of files. Now, where are files stored in? What is the vessel that we store files in? The vessel, the container.
Folder.
Folder, exactly. Who was that who answered the question?
Dharni, sir.
Dharni, Monica and Dharni. Okay, very good. Now, where do we store folders in? Another bigger vessel.
Logical drive.
Logical drive, fantastic. So there are only 4 things you have to remember with the files, folders, and drives, right? You have to remember files. Files are stored in folders. Folders are stored in logical drives. The logical drives connected together, they form a file system. File system, logical drive, folder, file. 4 things, that's it. They all have names. Now, give me an example of a file system over the network, over the internet, that can be used to share photos and videos. Anyone want to take a chance? Shilpa? Shiba?
SD. SD.
What is the name? Give an example of a file system over the internet. I just talked about it 5 minutes ago. What can you use to share photos with friends? See, today you can use WhatsApp to share photos with friends, right? You can use WhatsApp, you can use email. But how do you use a file system to share photos and videos? What is that file system on the internet? Give me an example. We call it a drive, some kind of drive. Give me an example.
Network drive, sir.
Correct, network drive. And the example of that is Google Drive.
Okay, sir.
Google Drive. Google Drive is an example of a file system over the internet that you can use to share photos and videos. Now, Microsoft has their own thing. It's called OneDrive. Okay. So now we move into the practical session. For the practical session, let me see if I can share the screen from this. Okay, can you all see this desktop screen?
Yes, sir.
Okay, very good. So this is an operating system which mimics, meaning which looks like Windows. Okay, I'm going to use this to make you get a feel for how Windows is when you want to look at files, folders, and drives on Windows. Okay, so the look and feel of this is exactly like in Windows. We saw it in the first lecture. Bottom left is the startup menu, right? Shutdown and startup menu. Then if I click on this, you get the startup menu. You can do a logout, you can do a shutdown, right? And then there are different categories of software. We will not go into categories of software. All we want to do is look at file system and folders today. So if I want to look for a file system in this desktop, what symbol should I look for? Shilpa, Shiba, Monica, Dhanush. What symbol should I look for? Hello?
Sir, once again, sir.
Yeah. See, I'm on this desktop now, right? You can see the desktop screen. I want to know where the file system is. What symbol should I look for?
File manager, sir.
You can look for file manager, yes, but the symbol looks like a folder. You have to
Yes,
look
sir.
for the folder symbol. So if you follow my mouse cursor, I'm going to take it to the folder symbol. Do you see the highlight here? It's called file manager, right? Now, every operating system will have one app. That app helps you look into the file system. That app has different names in different operating systems. In Android, it may be called file or files. In iOS on iPhone, it will be called file or files. In this particular operating system that I'm using, it is called file manager. In on Windows, it used to be called Explorer. I don't know if the name has changed. Then in Mac OS, it is called Finder. Finder. It is nothing but an app that lets you look at the file system. So I clicked on it. If we click on it, what happens? It gives me a file system view. Okay. So what it has done is given me a file system view. Now look at the file system view. At the top left, you have, it tells me this is the top, the highest, topmost level of my file system. Okay. The topmost level of my file system is actually residing in one logical drive, and that logical drive in some operating systems is called a device. Okay, they call it disk or device or logical drive. In this case, it is called device. Then it has multiple folders in it, right? These folders typically at the highest level will have different kind of names. The one we want to go into is this one. The username of the account for this particular login account here, the username is pi. So that's why you see the home symbol there, and that's the home account for the username pi. And the user could have been Monica, in which case the username could have been Monica, or the username could have been Sudhir, and the username would have been Sudhir. Under Sudhir, you have different folders. You have desktop as one folder, which means if I create anything in the desktop folder, it will show up on the desktop screen. So let's, for example, figure out how to create a folder, right? I want to create a new folder. If you want to create a new folder, you have to go to the file menu, click on the file menu and say create folder. And now we have to give a name for the folder. Okay, who wants to choose a name for the folder? Give me a name for the folder, any name. Shilpa, what's a good name for a folder?
Good name.
We will call it Shilpa. How about that? Shall I call it Shilpa?
SG. SG.
Okay, we'll call it Shilpa. So we are creating a new folder, okay, and we are calling it Shilpa. Look what happened. The folder showed up in the desktop folder, okay, and the desktop folder always maps to what is on your desktop screen. Do you see the Shilpa folder on the desktop screen, top left here?
Yes, sir.
Okay. So if I create one more folder on the desktop now, let's call this new folder Dhanush. Okay. So do you see Dhanush showing up on the left top?
Yes, sir.
Okay. So that's what happens in the desktop folder. Now there is another folder called trash. Trash means anytime you delete a file, anytime you delete a folder, it goes into trash. Trash is like a trash bin, right? Like a garbage bin, trash bin, like a trash can. So you have a software logical trash bin or trash can here. Anytime you delete a file, so what we will do is to go to desktop folder and we will delete the Shilpa folder. In many operating systems, desktop operating systems, laptop operating systems, especially Windows, you can use the right mouse button. Okay, the moment you click on the folder called Shilpa with the right mouse button, you get a few menu options. In the menu option, you have delete. And I'm going to delete. It'll ask me, do you want to permanently delete? Yes. Now it got deleted. It went away from the desktop screen. Now, where did it go? It should go into trash. Well, turns out it has already deleted it. Okay. So operating system behavior with respect to trash can be different. Some operating systems, when you delete a file, it will move it to a trash folder, and every day or every week or every month, it will empty the trash, right? This particular operating system decided to delete it immediately, not even take it to the trash can, right? But on Windows and Mac OS, it will first go to the trash bin or trash can, and then it will get emptied once a week, once a month, whatever. Now we are going to look at all desktop, laptop operating systems today have similar kind of structure in your home account, in your home user account, okay? The structure, there will be one folder for desktop, there will be one folder for documents, okay? By default, if you create a new document, it will go into the documents folder. Then there will be a folder for downloads. Can someone guess what the folder for downloads is used for? Can you guess, please? Hello?
SG.
What is the download folder used for? Take a guess.
Desktop.
No, it is anything you download from the internet will go into the download folder. Do you remember, you know that you can download things from the internet, right? You can download documents, you can download photos, you can download videos, you can download software. When you download software, any file from the internet, by default, it will go into the download folder, okay?
Okay.
Yes. Now, there is another folder called music. If you use a music app or this kind of structure is there on laptops and desktops. The structure for your file system in mobile phones will be far simpler. It will not be this sophisticated or this complicated. It is going to be far simpler. It will only have my files or my folder, just one folder, okay? Only in files and desktops, because you have this bigger view and you can manage things better, you have a much more organized file system. So on laptops, desktops, you will have a music folder. If you download music, it will go to the music actually, all downloads go to downloads. But if you create music using a music app, it will go into the music folder. If you create pictures using the photo app, it will go into the pictures folder. Similarly, there's a video folder. Now, we will not go into the network part here, but that also shows up as part of your file system view. But it is nothing but taking you onto network drives. So you see here, browse network. It means search for network drives. And network drives, many operating systems allow you a way to look for drives on other computers. We are not going to look at that here. Now, in the next session, next lecture, next week, we will get into applications. We will do some sample applications of maybe how to create, edit software. But we will have separate lectures on how to do word processing, how to do spreadsheets, how to do PowerPoint presentations. But next lecture will be on using simple normal apps outside of, we will also use word processing, but mostly to help you understand the create, edit, delete cycle of creating, working with files. Okay, so remember the practical part of it. What we did was we were already logged into our laptop account. We were logged into our desktop account, right? and the username, that account had a name. The name can be your name, right? Like Monica or Shilpa, or in this case, the name was Pi, and the home account for the file system always has a predetermined structure. That structure has a desktop folder, it has a trash folder, it has a documents folder, it has downloads folder, music, pictures, videos, and everything. The desktop folder maps to the desktop screen. Anything you store on the desktop screen shows up in the desktop folder. Trash is used when you delete things. Sometimes remember that some operating systems will delete your files immediately. So you should know that if you're deleting by accident, there is a chance you could lose your file permanently. Then always file systems are good for organizing data and information. I believe in very good organization of data and information. The moment you use computers, you are going to generate so many files that organization, having proper folders, having proper folder names is very important. We showed you how to create a folder called Shilpa. I showed you how to create a folder called Dhanush. You could have created the folder in the documents folder. You could have created the folder in the music folder. You can create a folder inside any other folder. So folders can lie inside folders, okay? So that is the key. Why do you use folders? You use folders to organize data, have separate vessels, separate containers for separate kinds of, let's say you're applying for jobs. You can have one folder called resumes, or CV, right? If you are doing a project on environment, you can have a folder name with name environment project 1. Or if you start doing a project for HUM or Pudiodor, you can have a project folder name by that HUM or Pudiodor project name. So folders are used to organize data, to have some proper structure, so you can easily search for the information you want. They'll have file names, and file names can have extensions, and extensions will tell you what kind of file it is, okay? So this ends the desktop laptop version of it, and Dhanashri will take up from here. And let me stop sharing. And Dhanashri, you should be able to share. What you can do is start off with the Android file view. From there, you can move on to Google Drive.
Okay, I'll share my screen on the mobile. Okay, I'm sharing my screen. Okay, this is my home page of my mobile. Okay. And this is my Google Drive here. Okay, this is my Google Drive. I'm clicking on that. Fine. So these are the tabs that you see here. This is the home, where you will be able to see all the files that I have on the Google Drive. And these are all the files that I have got shared with some other person. So all the files that I've shared will always appear here under the shared icon. And here in this folder or file symbol here, you'll be able to see all the folders that I have created here. So if I have to create any folder, okay, here is the plus symbol that you see. I just have to click here. It will ask you to create a folder. So let me create a folder here first to show you. I will name it as test, and I will click on create. Okay, so here you're able to see I have a test folder being created and it is showing up. Now I want to upload some file here. So how do I do that? Suppose I go to my WhatsApp, and I want to access some file which I want to store that on the Google Drive. So this is the PDF file that I want to save it on the Google Drive. So what do I do here? You are able to see a triangle along with the plus symbol there. You just have to click on that and it will give you an option whether you want to save it to Drive. Okay, and then you have my account details, my Gmail account, and under folder tab there, you just have to click and choose the destination wherever you want to save that particular PDF. So since recently I have created this test folder here, I will save it under that. I will select this test folder. Okay, and I'll save this PDF file in this test folder. Okay, this is being saved. Now, how do I see this file? I'll go to my Drive. I'll go to the test folder. And if you see the symbol here, it is getting uploaded. Okay. Okay. In the meanwhile, I will show you how to share a file in this Drive itself. Let me show some other files since it is still uploading it here. I will show you some other file that I can share with somebody else now. Suppose I have one empty Google Excel sheets, a simple Excel sheet, which I want to share it probably with Monica here in the group. I want to share it with her. So what do I do? So this is the Excel sheet. I will click on this plus and a man symbol there. I'll click on that. Okay, one second, allow. Okay, it will ask you like this, like, do you want to add people or group with whom you want to share this Excel sheet? I know Monica's Gmail ID. So I will add here her Gmail ID, and you have to even choose the permission, whether you want to just give her a viewer option or a commenting option or an editing option. What do you mean by viewer option? She'll be just able to view this Excel sheet. She'll not be able to do any changes or type anything in that. Okay. What is editing editor permission is that she'll be able to edit the Excel sheet. Okay, so I will give a viewer permission to her and just click on this arrow mark here that you are able to see, and I'll send a message to her. Hi, Monica. I have shared an Excel. Okay, I have shared. Hi, Monica. I'll click on this arrow symbol and let me see. What happens here is a mail will be sent to Monica, and she will have an access to this particular file. Okay. So where she'll be able to see this file, I'll show you where it is. When you go for this drives, okay, she will be able to see this particular file under this shared symbol. Once you open the drive, open the Google Drive, you will be able, Monica will be able to see that shared Excel sheet under this shared symbol here. Okay, she'll be able to access it here. So Monica, can you please check whether you're able to access in your Google Drive this particular Excel sheet and let me know.
Akka, I'm not used this email ID, Akka. I changed my email ID.
Oh, you changed your, oh yeah. Okay, not a problem. So what happens is Monica will get an email stating that I have shared this particular Excel sheet with her, and she'll be able to access this particular file. Okay, this is what happens. Okay. Let's let me show it on my system here. I will stop sharing my phone screen here and I will go to my system. Okay. Okay, here, this is my Google Drive, where I'll be able to access this Google Drive. If you log into your Gmail, where you see all the symbols like Gmail, YouTube, and everything, you will have this drive symbol where you have to click on that and you will be able to access your drive. Okay, this is my Google Drive. Yes, this is my Google Drive, and it actually shows recently what actions that I've done. In the sense, recently I've created this Excel sheet and I have uploaded this PDF file also to my Google Drive. Okay. Now, if I have to do it on the system, then what do? I just have to click on this Excel sheet, click on the plus symbol here, add that particular person's Gmail ID here and click on done. If you want to share it, you can even copy this link and probably even send a WhatsApp message to him on your mobile phone also. Coming to the drives here, if I have to delete this particular Excel sheet, then I just have to choose this and click on this remove option there, where that particular Excel sheet will be deleted. So, Sudhir ma'am, anything else that I need to explain here?
No, I think this is good. So you've
Yes.
covered how to look at files on Android mobile phones. You have covered how to access Google Drive from Android mobile phones, how to create documents, how to share. And now you have also shown how to go to a laptop or desktop kind of system and access the Google Drive using your web browser. Correct?
Yes.
And
Yes.
shown how to delete the file, look at the shared file and delete the file if needed. Okay, I think this should be enough for the day.
Okay. Then I'll stop sharing. Yes.
Bye.
Thank you. Bye.